All right, Brian. These are my favorite interviews to do because we get to take it offline a bit. So, for anyone who's just finding this is Brian Vieaux. He is the president and COO of Lockard. We've had two shorter conversations that we've done on a segment called Max Combos. It runs through NMP. This is just for fun. We just get to chat just because I want to know more about you, want to know more about what you do, your experiences, etc. So do me a favor, give me a little bit of background. Why don't we actually take it from the top? How did you get into this industry? When did that start? Walk me through it.
Yeah. So, well, it started a long time ago. I actually got in the business in 1991. Newly married, returning from a honeymoon, and my now or then father-in-law said, first thing he said was, you need to get a job with benefits. He was self-employed and, wanted his daughter and my wife off of his insurance. And so freshly married, just out of college, I had been doing cash work for a builder that I worked for when I was in college, and that was great. And now I had to go find a job. So this is before LinkedIn. What we did was we would create our resume, print it out, and go drive around to companies and basically hand out your resume. And I did that in the community that we lived in. Probably dropped my resume off at a dozen companies, and one of the companies that called me back pretty quickly was a company called Source One Mortgage Company. Never heard of them. I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't even know what a mortgage was at the time. But they were interested in me, and their timing was like, can you come back tomorrow to meet, the hiring manager? So I literally came back the next day after my first interview. And before I left, they had asked me when I could start. To level set for everybody, the prevailing par interest rate was probably somewhere around 12.5, 13% in 1991. And it was coming down. At that point, it was coming down from mid to high teens. And so I was one of 5 people in a retention, kind of refinance retention division that was just getting stood up at this company. And over the first six months when I was in the business, rates went from double digits to 10 to 9 to 8.5%, literally in that first 6 to 12 months. So, employee number 5 in a division that grew to a couple hundred people, I quickly advanced into sales leadership. Not because I was qualified, but because I was there. But it was really, it was a great way to come into the business, learn about origination and sales and the process. And I've been in it since 1991. I spent most of my career in the third party business, buying loans from, lenders and brokers. And then a little over 5 years ago, made the move out of mortgage production into mortgage technology sales with Lockard.
Okay, very cool. I feel like the only timing that could have possibly been better for a situation like that is someone who got into the industry in like 2019.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Where just the floodgates open, because those are huge drops in interest rates.
Yes.
And the excitement that must have been just like washing over people to be like, oh, I went from a teen to a 9.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was no sales involved. It was like you just presented the numbers and, they had to be stupid.
It was done for you.
Yeah.
Well, that is a true refi boom. And as much as we may all want the refi boom that I think so many people are hoping will eventually happen, I don't know that boom is the proper word to put with it.
Yeah.
I think there will be refi opportunities, but I don't think we're going to see the boom that so many people think we're going to see.
No, I think you're right. And I think there's another element to it in that the biggest servicers out there are much better equipped today to handle any refinance that comes our way as an industry. And so I don't think the booms are going to be as big. I think there's going to be a couple little boomlets that come and go. But, I think everyone needs to be very aware that the servicers are going to do everything they can to keep the customer. And so, my recommendation is to loan officers today is no different than it was 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. You need to stay meaningfully connected with your client base and your database, because they're not going to automatically think of you when rates drop, because they're going to be getting inundated from their current servicer and probably every other company that's marketing. And so it's never been more important to add value to your database so that they're thinking of you in a meaningful way if and when rates, get to a place where it makes sense for someone to refi.
I think you're so right. And you mentioned a couple of things that I want to come back to. First being the word boomlet.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that because that's such the perfect way to describe what might be a little bit of this rather than a lot of just skyrocketing.
Right.
So great term. Two, you're so right. These servicers are going to do everything that they can to just house and hold on to that mortgage. So they're going to be hitting your customers so much faster than what I think we've seen in the past. Automation of so much of the customer outreach as well has occurred even over the last couple of years. I've seen a huge uptick in it. So staying top of mind, keeping yourself relevant will never be more important than it is right now. I know for you, you are so active on LinkedIn. You do a fantastic job, and your profile in and of itself could be its own little masterclass for someone looking to start out in it. What do you think is kind of a good way for someone to delve into LinkedIn who's maybe been apprehensive, who has maybe tried out Facebook, Instagram, other platforms that they're like, it's not resonating for them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think what I would, my experience on LinkedIn has had many kind of test and learns, test and fail, if you will. I think what you have to figure out first is understand in your own head who your target audience is. So for me, it's mostly loan officers or, sales leaders, maybe marketing leaders at mortgage companies, banks, and credit unions. So I'm pretty crystal clear on who I want to talk to and who I want to pay attention to me on LinkedIn. And so I think once you know who your target audience is, then it becomes infinitely easier to create the content, because the best way to create content, in my opinion, on LinkedIn is to solve problems. And so if I put my loan officer hat on, boy, do consumers have a lot of problems when it comes to buying and or refinancing a home, right? There's all kinds of things that different consumers have that they need help with. And so the average loan officer, if they just took if they took the last 10 questions they were asked by a consumer or a realtor about mortgage, about a transaction, or even if they took a tougher deal that they worked on, there's so much content in the questions and in those tougher deals that you just have to go put yourself out there, go on video and talk about the solution to those problems. And there's your content strategy for that, ideal customer profile. But you kind of hit on this. All of us just have to get out of our own way and mostly get out of our own head. And so you just have to I say it because I did it, but it wasn't easy. You just have to dive in and just start putting content out there. And sometimes you're going to look dumb and you're going to say things that aren't great, but guess what? Nobody cares. They
move on quickly. Move on quickly. I think for so many people, they get so scared to be on video. But what you look like is what you look like. There's no way around that. And for a lot of people, most likely they've already met you in person.
That's
or
right.
At some point, you're going to jump on a call with them to maybe cover an LE, right? They're going to end up seeing you eventually. Just get yourself out there. Get out of your own way. I know for so many people that does hold them up. I do think though, for those of us who are used to doing video, because I mean, I've been putting videos out there for years now in previous incarnations, etc. It does come a lot easier, and it does take time, and it does take practice. And I do think it is worth mentioning that probably your first year's worth, you're going to look back and you're going to be like, oh, this was kind of shit.
Yeah.
But you just have to keep rolling with it. It really is the best way to learn. And then you can continue to evolve as time goes on. Quit holding yourself quit being so prideful,
Right.
I guess is the best way to put it.
It's, we always hear, what is it? Malcolm Gladwell talked about the 10,000 hours, right? And there's example after example of these amazing people that today are amazing, or yesterday they were amazing. But when they first did whatever they are amazing at the first time, they probably weren't very good at it. And I remember in one of his books talking about the Beatles, right? I mean, the Beatles didn't become the Beatles until they put in their 10,000 hours, playing in small clubs and, in house parties. And so that's no different than when we, are creating content for LinkedIn or whatever platform. You just got to, like, even just doing this is practice, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. And if at the end of the day, you really are so uncomfortable and you're so unhappy with it, maybe you don't do video.
Right.
But can you type? Can you use ChatGPT to help you type?
Right.
Can you take some fun pictures and post them with your thoughts? There are so many different avenues that I think people almost get like an analysis paralysis, because they're like, there's so many people already doing this. There's so much content already out there. How am I going to set myself apart? The point is if you don't ever start, you're never going to do it anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
Just get it out there. I have kind of the same mantra with people who don't go to expos or who don't try to put themselves out there in more of a consumer facing way, where I'm like, maybe you don't see the value in it, but your competitor might. And if your competitor's there, they're going to be the ones who are top of mind. It's the same thing with social media. So I think the concepts go hand in hand.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about, if we went back 10 years in our business, before there was any social media, the only way that you could stand out, get your name out there, was to be present and show up at events, right? And so if you're a community loan officer, those events might have been, BNI networking breakfasts. They were maybe co-hosting first-time homebuyer webinar seminars, stuff like that. But the point was, you had to show up in order for people to kind of keep you top of mind. We're now in this age where what we're doing on this talk and what I do on LinkedIn and what you do on social, that's the digital way of showing up now. And one thing I would put out there, even if someone says they're just dead set, they're never going to get on video, depending on the consumer that you're trying to transact with, that could be the difference between them picking you or not. And, they're going to go do their homework on you. Even if you were referred to them by a realtor, everyone's going to go look you up. And one of the places where they're looking you up right now is on your social profile. And so if you're a ghost and you don't exist, even if you were, referred with high marks by a realtor to you, if you don't show up anywhere digitally, I can't see where you're going to get picked by that consumer to work with them.
No, you're so right. I mean, YouTube, Instagram, both are becoming their own giant search engines within themselves.
Right.
I won't even buy a pair of pants anymore unless I'm like, let me go Instagram them and see them on a few people because I want to know how they wear in real life. It's the same story for these professionals. It really is. Talk to me a little bit. Let's get into the Green Book.
Yeah. So in August of 2023, I got a package in the mail. Working from home, you get excited when anybody shows up your door, even if it's the UPS guy. So I ripped open the package, and there was, I think that book's behind me somewhere. It there was this purple book. I don't see it behind me. So I look at the book. It's written by a guy, Kyle Draper. Never heard of Kyle. It was a short book, and there was a QR code on the front of the book. And so I scan the QR code, and then a video pops up on my phone, and it's this guy, Scott Payne, and Scott says, "Brian, we don't know each other. I've been following you on LinkedIn. I love what you're doing. I thought about you when I read this book and hope it helps you in your LinkedIn journey." It was basic. He didn't ask for a meeting. He wasn't trying to sell me anything. So the book was short. So over the course of the weekend, when I had it, I read the book like 2 or 3 times. And it's a really good book. It was Kyle's first book, Rethink Everything You Know About Social Media. And I started to take pictures, snapshots, screenshots, if you will, of pages from his book. And then, I would write a post with my comments on the point that Kyle made on that particular page. I did this like for 12 straight days. Like on day number 8, I get a direct DM from Kyle on LinkedIn. It said, he's like, "Hey man, I don't know who you are, and I'm thinking, oh, I did something wrong. I just put his whole book out on the internet. This guy's mad at me." He said, "But your posts are amazing. They're blowing up my profile. He's like, I just want to say thank you for sharing my book." And he's like, "I'd love to, hook up and meet you for a 5-minute virtual coffee." So we scheduled a call, and it was going to be like a 15-minute call that went 90 minutes. And during the call, what I learned from Kyle was, how he was inspired to write the Purple book, but how he was really inspired about this concept of Rethink Everything becoming a series of additional books. And we left the call, I basically said, "I got a new friend. This is cool." And something hit me like 2 nights later. I had this idea for his next book. And I messaged him and said, "Kyle, I'd love to jump back on a call. I think I have the idea for your next book." And we talked again. And at the time I was thinking about the title being something like Rethink Everything You Know About Serving the Next Generation Home Buyer, because we were already starting to see this shift in how that next generation, specifically Gen Z, buys things and researches and just everything that goes into, serving that generation. And so he and I started talking about it, and he loved it. He's never originated alone. It had been 15 years since I originated alone. So we both quickly knew it wasn't going to be him and I as the experts on this topic. And so between the two of us, we knew a dozen people that we thought could be pretty helpful in contributing to this book. 12 people turned into 37. We published the book in March of 2024. I think we sold something around 12,000 or so copies of it. But what's been really fun is how the book has led to just a lot of cool conversations, and just hearing people talk about how they'll pick they might be in a rut and they'll pick the book up and, flip open a chapter and find something that inspires them. And the coolest thing for me is that the 37 people that contributed to this thing we've kind of formed a little community, and we've done some webinars together. We've met, a bunch of us have met in person at conferences, and I think it'll live on in a pretty unique way. And hopefully the people that are reading it are getting value and finding ways to rethink everything about how they serve the next generation home buyer.
I think that's so important for people to stay present and motivated and want to continue to become better at their crafts, because you're right. The way that people approach doing mortgages now has changed drastically, even over the last 2 to 3 years, let alone someone who got into it 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
So there's a lot of new information out there. There's a lot of different mindset shifts that need to occur. You mentioned Phil Treadwell.
Yeah.
In a previous conversation. I adore Phil. And that is part of his whole mantra is the mindset coach. It is so important, if not more important now than ever, to really get your head in the game, because it's a really tough time to be in this industry. It's been a tough couple of years. I don't think that's going to change drastically anytime soon. What better way than to continue to educate yourself and continue to refresh yourself on what maybe people are looking for now, how they're approaching going about getting a mortgage. And I think it is important to also remove yourself from what you know and approach it from your consumer's perspective.
Right.
I've been having to do this myself. So as an educator who is building out a new learning management system, I'm now going through our system and testing it out as a student, right? It gets to be that kind of first look, even for me, in reminding myself that not everyone is familiar with the terminology that we use. I don't know why other people don't take the time to do that in their mortgage origination business. So I think that that's a fantastic way to kind of work backwards, if you will.
I read, it was probably 4 months ago. I was reading an article, and it was a technology company building, consumer facing tech. I don't remember what the tech was, but they talked about, as developers of this technology, the importance and value of eating your own dog food, right? And so putting yourself in the position of your customer, your ideal customer, and going through your own process. So as a loan officer, have you put yourself through your own loan application process? I mean, I bet most have not. And you should. You should really do that. And it's going to open your eyes, I think, probably in some cases, not in a good way, but indirectly, it'll be a good way if you can address a pain point that you experience as a consumer yourself. So eating your own dog food, we love that here at FinLocker.
Okay, so let's talk about FinLocker now, because I really love what you do. I think it is such a cool concept that more people really should be utilizing and educating their consumers and kind of being that all-inclusive voice for their customer. But walk me through it for people who aren't familiar with what FinLocker is and what you do.
Sure. So I'll start with what we're not, right? That usually is helpful. We're not a point of sale system. We're not a loan origination system. We're not a CRM. We have components that people might say, do things that are sort of in the POS space or CRM space, but we're not any of those things. We're an education and engagement technology, and we're a consumer-facing technology. So think about personal financial apps that consumers have access to in the marketplace, whether it's used to be mint.com, Credit Karma, NerdWallet, Rocket Money, even Zillow, right? These are all individual tools that we as consumers have access to. Typically, with all of these tools, they're in the business to make money, these brands. And some of the ways they do that is by selling the consumer as a lead to a financial services company. So if you're using NerdWallet, you're going to get offers for different financial services type products. What we did is we took the features that the consumers would use in those apps, whether it was personal budgeting or setting and tracking a goal to save for a down payment, or understanding your credit, learning how to improve your credit, and then having a tool to actually guide you through that credit improvement journey, if you will. We built those tools in our technology, and then we're a B2B2C company. So we deploy our technology through a lender typically. We do have a version of the product that's available to any loan officer. But essentially, we give our lender partners and the loan officers their own version of Rocket meets Credit Karma meets Zillow. And then a little bit of our secret sauce is that we, on top of the data from those tools I mentioned, whether it's budgeting or goal setting, savings goal setting, et cetera, we build mortgage readiness journeys. So every consumer that comes into our technology, and we're a native mobile app, by the way. So as a loan officer, you basically live on the consumer's phone as a mobile app 24/7, 365. But every user that comes into our technology, we ask them where they are on their homeownership journey. And based on their answer to that question, and then We uncover their goals and objectives for home ownership. They're put on a very dynamic, personalized journey that's going to assess their mortgage readiness on 4 dimensions: assets. So do you have enough money for down payment, closing costs, maybe even reserves, income and employment, credit, and then finally debt to income ratio. So we perpetually analyze the consumer across those 4 dimensions. And then the app is going to engage that consumer when they're making progress, towards any one or more of those attributes, and also alerting them when maybe they're going the wrong way. And so it's a personalized, journey, if you will, digital journey, but the loan officer is front and center in that entire experience. So in the app itself, the loan officer is always present. We have a tile that keeps the LO in front of the consumer. They're a click away. The consumer can share their information, ask for help at any given time. And then we alert the loan officer along the way of milestones, achievements. As consumers are taking advantage of the tools, we're letting the loan officer know, not so they can be, big brother-ish and kind of come in over the top, but we really position the LOs to have smarter, more intentional conversations along the way. And then one thing I'll leave you with on this topic is I believe that every one of us at any given time knows at least 5 people, maybe younger people, who at some point in the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months are going to think about starting the home buying process for the first time. I really do think that we all know 5 people. Like, I could walk out my front door, look right, look left down my street, and there's probably 5 between my neighbors and their kids' friends. And so if I'm a loan officer and I know 5 people, I know another 10 people that know 5 people. Why am I not building up this pipeline of future first-time home buyers where I'm their resource for financial readiness as a loan officer, and I leverage this FinLocker technology to scale my ability to help, a bigger pipeline of these prospective home buyers. So, I think this bleeds into the hybrid loan officer model a little bit, but I think as loan officers, we're all looking at ways to become more relevant earlier in a consumer's financial life and build that trust through education.
You have to. You have to. There is something so innate about the way that consumers are going about finding the information that they find, that if you are not top of mind, you're going to be forgotten.
That's right.
So why not establish yourself early on as that expert, as that voice to them? And what better way to do that? A question in regards to the technology. So it's not that the LO can just kind of peep in at any time on them. It's only, okay, I'm so curious because like that does seem a little big brother-ish.
Yeah,
but to just get the highlights makes more sense.
When a consumer creates their account, they consent to share certain information. And the wording in the consent language is speaking to you're agreeing to share this information so your loan officer can help you on your journey, right? Now, the consumer can decide not to share that. That's fine. But we find that over 85% of consumers that create an account, they do consent to share that. But to your point, LaDonna, we're not sharing, Brian has X number of dollars in his bank account. We're sharing high level pieces of information in a timely manner that will aid and assist the loan officer in having more intelligent, meaningful conversations along the way. Like, credit score is a great example. I don't necessarily share the exact credit score of the consumer with the loan officer, but I can share the score in a 10-point band. And we update the score every 7 days. So as a loan officer, if I'm getting this alert in my feed that Brian's score is improving incrementally over time, then that gives me a reason maybe a month from now for the loan officer to reach out to me and have a check-in conversation, right?
No, absolutely.
The same with some of those other
critical. Oh, I love that. I love that. Something else that I know that we both share and have in common is our wild travel schedules.
Yeah.
You just got back from Tokyo. I would love to hear about that. What what took you to Tokyo?
Yeah, baseball. So
What?
yeah, our oldest son has been a professional baseball player for right around 10 years now.
Really?
Yeah, he was drafted in 2016, I think, by the Pittsburgh Pirates. Played in their organization for 8 years, spent, had one summer where he got up with the big league team, which was awesome. And then played a year in the Mexican professional baseball league. And then this off season was invited to try out for Team USA that was playing in this world tournament. They call it the
What?
Premier 12. So he joined Team USA. They went and played a tournament in Guadalajara, Mexico, advanced from that tournament to Tokyo for the World Championship. And literally, my wife and I made the decision to make the trip and go check it out like 4 days before they were going. So
I
not a
can't
lot of
imagine that flight was cheap.
yeah, no, yeah, it was not inexpensive, but worth it.
Totally.
Yeah, totally worth it. I don't know that Tokyo or Japan was ever going to be on our travel list, and so baseball took us there. I do think we'll go back. We were so impressed, awed by the culture and the people in Japan, and we'd love to go back and just spend more time there. It's just it's an amazing culture. I'll give you an example. There's millions of people in Tokyo. It's a big city, but I never saw a piece of garbage on the street, on the sidewalk. People aren't walking around eating and drinking. People are very mindful of their fellow humans. And there's a lot we could learn here in the United States from that culture.
I love that.
It's a lot of respect for humanity.
I was in Hawaii earlier this year, and I had 4 different people while I was on vacation tell me, you know where you need to go. You really should go to Japan for your next vacation.
Right.
And the first time it happened, I was like, yeah, I'll look into it. And then the second time I was like, maybe there's something to it. And by time number 4, you better believe I was pulling up flights. I was looking at different destinations. And I think that really is going to be my next real vacation destination, because there's so much to offer. And everyone has said the exact same things about it. The people are fantastic. It's such a kind and very courteous country that is also very clean. And like you said, the mindset of people is different. So that's amazing.
It was inspiring in a lot of ways, and in some ways maybe a little discouraging coming back to the United States. And sometimes we're just not nice. We're just not nice to each other. And
no, you're right. You're
there's
right.
a lot we can learn.
I love that. I love that as kind of a takeaway of it, of adjusting the way that you talk to and treat others.
Right.
I had kind of my own reminder of that the other day. And I was running to the mall, and I was going for a very specific reason. On my way up there, I was like, I forgot lip gloss. Right, the simplest thing, but I looked like a drowned rat, so I had to run in and grab some. So I get in there and I'm talking to the lady, and I'm making it kind of short. By nature, I'm a very kind and polite person. So if I'm being kind of short, it's because I really have a goal that I am trying to get to. So I'm like, yeah, no, I really just need this one. I'm just gonna grab it. I'm just gonna go. She's like, okay, by the way, I know you. I follow you. I've been following you since 2020. You're LaDonna. And I just want to let you know, like, it's really cool to meet you in person. And of course, I get this like gut punch in the stomach where it was just that reminder of always put your best face forward. It costs nothing to be kind. Why not treat people with a little bit more respect? We'll have to get into this at another point. Because that is the way that we conduct our education courses. I love Welcome to Working from Home, where someone just knocks right away at the door. I'm sure it's my daughter's friend. And then my dog, of course, goes crazy. all the things,
Yeah.
all the things. We'll just get everything. We'll see if I can get a delivery dropped off while we're doing this too. But that is one of the key components of how we conduct our live classes.
Oh yeah.
Is they are led with kindness and inclusivity and making people really feel welcome, giving them that space, because that was something that I saw such a need for, particularly post-pandemic, where people became so closed off from one another. And seeing the way that it's carried over and affected so many people and their attitudes has just, it made me more conscious of it, and it made me decide in a very small way I could do something about it. That. At another point, we'll delve.
And we all need, sometimes we need those reminders, it's good to get them sometimes.
Trust me, it was a reminder, that's for sure. Well, Brian, I mean, you have been more than generous with your time. I'm going to let you go just because I feel like we've already carried over what we were going to. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat, for letting other people have maybe what might be their initial experience of getting to know you, getting to know about the Green Book, getting to know what you do at Lockard. I think all of it is fantastic information. Let's do this again soon.
For sure. Yeah. And I'm going to have you on my podcast, LaDonna, for sure.
Let's do it. Let's do it. We'll just pick this right back up.
You got it. Thank you so much.